Welcome to Coming About with David Paragamian, the podcast that dives deep into the minds of leaders who have transformed their businesses and industries, paving the way for a better future. Here's Dave.
My guest this week is Kathleen Herowanto, who's the Senior Director and Executive Strategic Advisor to the Head of Finance, the SVP of Finance and Operations at Novo Nordisk. But that doesn't begin to tell the story that Kathleen brings to the table here today on our Coming About podcast. Kathleen is someone who, over the course of her career, has been on the agency side in media, on the client side, has been in the packaged goods retail world, has been now a long time in the pharma industry. And certainly having run a media department and then pivoting into being the right-hand person for the head of finance. Boy, Kathleen, you've had an upward trajectory and also a career path that is also making lots of decisions and changes and evolutions. So clearly what I want to do is let you tell your story about how your career has evolved and the brave decisions you've made to make different changes in your career. So welcome and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you having me on board. Happy to give a bit of a background. I can start off by saying I don't think any of it was planned.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull that thread. So when you graduated from school, did you know you wanted to get into marketing and communications and those sorts of things?
So I went to school for music business management. Did internships at record companies. This was 2004 when I graduated, so it was the same time that you're dealing with Napster and the big recording companies collapsing, and there really just was not opportunity there. And dating myself here, but I was looking through the actual paper for jobs, and I saw in the New York Times, learn the ins and outs of the media industry. And I thought to myself, okay, media, music, close enough. Let me see if I could get started there, and then I'll eventually find my way over.
So you know what's really interesting, I can't resist there, is for someone that might be early on in their career, there's a lesson there too, which is the nimbleness of saying, look, I initially thought I was attracted to the bullseye being, in this case, the music industry, but you being smart enough and mature enough to say, look, media and communications is at least a cousin of the music industry. Let me start there and see where that goes, right? I mean, that was a smart and, of course, a practical decision when we all graduate from college, and occasionally some of us have bills to pay and debts to pay, right? So good decision. And you started on the agency side then in the media world.
So I started on the agency side. It was, fast forward a few months, my second day of work, I learned that I actually worked in accounts payable when a giant stack of paper invoices were dropped on my desk for national broadcast networks. That was a door into what became a career that I was very passionate about. The experience that it brought me, understanding how the back office of an agency operates before moving into the strategic planning arm of media, really gave me a different perception, a different way of seeing things. I spent about a year in that role, had the opportunity to decide based on my performance if I wanted to move to the strategic planning side or if I wanted to move to the buying side of the house. And planning has always been a love of mine. So that's the path I chose.
It's so funny. I can totally relate to that in my own career. I remember a moment when I thought I was going to just keep moving directly up the marketing path. And my boss came to me and said, no, your next promotion is you're going to go out in the field and manage field organization. And I remember at the time thinking, wait, no, that's not what I want. So when you talk about someone came in and dropped a stack of invoices on your desk, doesn't look like a gift at first, but it turned out it was a really important gift that took you down the strategic side.
Yeah. And then add to that, it gave me a level of experience that many people who knew they wanted to be in media and came right into planning and buying did not have, which provided me the opportunity to be one of the go-tos as new businesses came on board, because I understood not only how to manage the strategic planning and account management, but also the back office setup, which was very interesting because I again, as new businesses came on, I've had the opportunity throughout my career to really be on the ground as the teams are forming versus maybe slotting into a replacement of someone on a very established business.
One of the things that's nice about working in agencies, and you worked in several agencies, is you work on a diverse group of clients. Some are big, some are small, some are launching, some are brands at the end of their life cycle. Any memories or experiences there that were particularly good learning experiences for you?
I've worked on everything. So I would joke with people that prior to coming to where I'm at now with Novo Nordisk, I've worked on every vertical except pharmaceutical. So whether it be energy, liquor, CPG, financial services, telecom, touched a little bit of everything. What I enjoyed most was, I would say, small to mid-size. There's more opportunity there for, at least in my experience, I found that there was more opportunity there for pushing the envelope, for being a bit more innovative, because you need to stretch the dollars further. And I really enjoyed that type of dynamic. Of course, there's good that comes with the large ones as well, but I did find my comfort and my sweet spot was in that small to mid-size range.
Yeah, no, that really resonates for me too. I mean, I think sometimes when you're on the highest profile, largest assignment, there's so much scrutiny and there are so many guardrails that it sometimes limits choice. And when you're on the smaller brand or the smaller assignment, then the challenger brand gets to do some things that are a little interesting, break some rules. I like that. That is something I experienced too. Tell me, obviously, after working for a number of agencies and going upward in those agencies, at one point, after liquor and CPG and financial services, you made a move to go to one of the largest world-class pharmaceutical organizations. What was the choice for you to say, hey, I want to go client side and I'm going to go into healthcare?
The choice for client side was something I always had an interest in. Depending on who your client is on the agency side, there's a different level of information that you get. I understood and I loved media. I understood a good part of marketing. It was very difficult on the agency side to see how that truly fit into the more holistic picture of the business. Can make assumptions or have my own perceptions, but without seeing the holistic picture, for me, there was a piece missing. And that's where I knew early on in my career, I wanted to have the opportunity to navigate the agency side for a while. I love the consultancy type feel of immersing yourself in a new vertical and getting up to speed really quickly. Of course, love the, work hard, play hard when I was in my 20s. But I knew that there was a time where I wanted to better understand the holistic picture and how this piece of the puzzle really helped complete the puzzle and what the value that it gave to the rest of the puzzle and triggers across the full business as well, right? So it was to really broaden my understanding of the value chain was the number one reason I wanted to move over. And thank you for, speaking of Novo as a top pharmaceutical company. However, 10 years ago when I started here, very well respected, definitely leaders in diabetes, but we were nowhere near the size of the organization we were today. However, I heard from many people that they treat their employees well. And I was also a new mom looking to get away from a bit of the rat race, commuting into Manhattan every day. It all aligned. I could give you a bit more of the story. It's actually an interesting story, but it all aligned in the end. And I'm one that believes in what will be. And that's what led me here.
Well, and you hit a couple of things that I want to pull on a little bit for the listener, which is, having been on the agency side and then you go to the client side and now you direct the agency. My guess is having sat in their shoes made you a much better client and a more clear client, a more empathetic client. And then you even mentioned being a mom. And so understanding that the person sitting across from you, wherever they are, whether they're your colleague at Novo or whether they're the person that works for you at your agency, they have a family too. Everybody has these responsibilities. And so I would imagine that the path that you've walked made you that much better as a person leading a department, providing direction to these agencies.
Yeah, I would like to think so. I mean, you'd have to ask some of my former agency teams if that is true. But I look at it as a strategic partnership, right? Of course, it is a client-supplier relationship, but it should function as a partnership for both sides to be able to get the most out of it. And I think that's something that I was conscious of the entire time I was sitting in that role. I will say it was one of my biggest learning curves as well. Come in thinking, oh, well, I know agencies and I even know the back office side, so I've got this. Managing an agency is a whole nother beast, especially when you're talking about a large, complex team. I think that was a bit of an eye-opener for me, thinking that I knew 90% of what I needed to know, but then realizing because I thought I knew 90%, I expected that it would maybe be 10% of my time. It regularly was around 30 or more % of my time. So I think that was a learning, and part of that had to do with the fact that I was looking at it as a partnership.
No, that totally resonates. My personal opinion is the higher up you go in an organization, you realize that it isn't about you. It's about all the other people that work with you and getting the best out of them and knowing what motivates them and knowing when they need to be pushed and when they need to rest. And that element of just interpersonal psychology or emotional quotient, as is so much talked about EQ, so important. I sometimes say to people, look, I'd rather trade 10 IQ points to get 10 more EQ points, right? It's all in how you manage and lead people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's really where I've spent a lot of my time. I mean, in this newer role, which I know we'll get into, of course, there's a lot for me to learn. But even if I look at the last 5 years of my career, that's where I've spent most of my time, is how to be the most effective leader, how to work with people with different levels of EQ, how to communicate with them in ways that resonate, because that is right, the interpersonal piece. I feel it is one of the most critical factors for success. You can teach a skill set. You cannot teach empathy.
Totally. It's so funny. Before we get into your new role, which I want to talk about, just to put a punctuation mark on this piece, I often say there's a big difference between management and leadership. Management that they'll teach you in a textbook is about identify what the objective is, follow up, check on it. Is it on time? Is it on budget?
Right.
And of course, that, yes, you can do that. You can check on projects. You can check on those things. But it's a human being on the other side of that and finding out and unlocking what motivates him or her and why they are on time or why they're late and why they're motivated or why they aren't motivated. If you can unlock that piece, then the magic happens. So you're totally right. I think at the end of the day, it's a people business. We're not selling rating points. We're not even selling pharmaceutical products. We're getting the most out of the people with whom we work.
Absolutely.
That's a great point to wrap up part 1 of our chat. Thank you, Kathleen. And coming up next time on Coming About, Kathleen will offer her advice on how employees should express self-advocacy and taking charge and having those courageous conversations to help propel their career forward.
The way that I see it is any role should work not only for the hiring manager, but also for the person who's taking it. You should feel empowered enough and be bold enough to lay out your expectations, because it needs to work for both sides.
This has been Coming About. We hope these conversations have left you feeling empowered and ready to take your organization to the next level. To speak with Dave about your business transformation or to learn more about Health Monitor Network, go to healthmonitornetwork.com. And don't forget to check out his book, Coming About, How We Transformed a Major Media Company and the Lessons There for You. Available wherever books are sold. Coming About with David Paragamian is a production of Advantage Audio.